forget to like and subscribe.
And hit the notification bell
so we can go to college and get more knowledge.
Welcome back in the place to be with the CBDC Assets Group. Thank you all for being a part of the group. This is the most information you'll find in any video. I want to give a special shout out to Leterna_V for creating this video, and Mr. XRP, Mr. Man XRP on X for sharing it with me. Thanks, man. So in this video, make sure you stay till the end because it exposes the fraud and the Ponzi scheme that is Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin Tether relationship has created a bubble that's bigger than the housing crisis of 2008. Think about that for 1 second. The bubble is bigger than that financial crisis we endured in 2008. Now, it goes into the players and the cause and effect of the things that happen. Number one thing is the relationships of the people that are behind Bitcoin that you might not necessarily know, like MasterCard, Jeffrey Epstein, MIT, presidential cabinet members, and so much more, and how they intentionally distort and slow down the Bitcoin network just so they can gain more fees. And once you see this, there's no turning back. So please, if you're new to the space, pay attention and stay till the end because it will expose you to things that you need to know if you plan on continuing investing in this space. And if you're experienced in this space, then the magnitude of what you're seeing will also blow your mind because it's just unreal, all the connections and all the foolery and shenanigans that are happening behind the scenes. So I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.
Exclusive access to a small elite is not a mere miscalculation or product of developers' ignorance. There are human interests and goals, circles of influence that once revealed clarify the entire picture. For we who value freedom and understand those who are the enemies of individual rights, you will see why the actors exposed shortly are of paramount importance to understand the deliberate boycott and sabotage of what was originally proposed as free money. Adoption of Bitcoin grew day by day on the streets. Bitcoin accepted here signs grew increasingly popular, and users uploaded videos of themselves in shops using the network to buy products with Bitcoin. Major companies such as Steam, Overstock, Dell, and Microsoft began to accept Bitcoin as a method of payment. From the initial famous purchase of 2 pizzas in exchange for 10,000 Bitcoins in 2010 until 2015, the course ahead seemed clear. With Satoshi Nakamoto already off the scene, Gavin Andreessen inherited the keys to the Bitcoin source code repository, and the team of developers expanded. In 2014, Blockstream is born, a company that will end up injecting itself into the Bitcoin code like a poison disguised as a cure. In truth, for those involved and for several years, the development of Bitcoin BTC has not been even close to the original community and decentralized project. What the world identifies today as Bitcoin and what the BTC miners are contributing their hashpower to is an implementation of Bitcoin called Bitcoin Core. Ideally, the implementations are varied and balanced so that development is not centralized in a single group of developers. In the case of Bitcoin BTC, the exact opposite has occurred. 99% of nodes run Bitcoin Core, that is, a single group of developers shapes the Bitcoin code. It is in that code where the limit is established to the size of the blocks at just 1 megabyte. It is important to understand that Bitcoin is just the name given by Satoshi Nakamoto to the project presented in the white paper. In the early years of Bitcoin, the code and the white paper matched correctly. Today, the name Bitcoin is the mask of a project far removed from the community, developed purely for profit, whose code is under the control of people completely antagonistic to the vision on which Bitcoin was conceived. Bitcoin Core is controlled by Blockstream. It is a company founded by Adam Back with contracted developers and multi-million-dollar financing. Let's start with AXA Group. AXA is an investment group and one of the largest insurance companies in the world. In 2016, after an investment round, they announced $55 million invested in Blockstream. At that time, the director of AXA Group was Henri de Castries, who at the same time the president of the Bilderberg Group, the core of globalism. In the latest AXA press articles, we can find references to biodiversity, climate change, and the threat of cyber attacks being mentioned more and more frequently. In the same year, Henri left his post and Thomas Gubern and Dennis Davern took his place. The latter is president of the Insurance Development Forum, an organization created with the support of the World Bank. To another side, we have the Digital Currency Initiative, a division of the MIT Media Lab. This group is directly involved with the development of the Lightning Network together with the Blockstream. We will come back to the Lightning Network. From 2011 to 2019, the Media Lab was led by Joi Ito, a Japanese businessman who began to speak publicly about Bitcoin in 2015, even proposing that Media Labs take over the development of the project. He's also the founder of Digital Garage, another investor in Blockstream. In 2019, Ito resigned after it was revealed that the MIT Media Lab received funding from Jeffrey Epstein. Even MIT released an announcement about this. To another side, and perhaps one of the most relevant actors in this scheme, is the Digital Currency Group, a company that finances a large number of projects related to cryptocurrencies, with Blockstream being the most important for its role in the development of Bitcoin Core and the Lightning Network. In 2015, the Digital Currency Group hosted a round of investments among a pool of investors, including none other than MasterCard. The card giant had been showing interest in joining the world of blockchain for some time, which is ironic given that the purpose of Bitcoin is to eliminate intermediaries. If anyone wants to believe that MasterCard is interested in eliminating intermediaries, they must certainly be a genius. The reality is that, like Visa and American Express, MasterCard's objective is to establish itself as a custodian of cryptocurrencies, or what is left of them. They explicitly lay out the importance of KYC, or Know Your Customer. Basically, the data and transactions of users are registered and available to the nation state. Let us highlight some important characters that are part of the direction of the Digital Currency Group. Glenn Hutchins, member of the Executive Committee of the Obama Board of Directors of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and former Clinton official, among other things. Lawrence Summers served as Secretary of the Treasury during the Clinton presidency and as Director of the National Economic Council for Barack Obama. The Digital Currency Group today has the widest and largest portfolio of companies related to cryptocurrencies in the world, including one of the media companies, CoinDesk. Added recently to the list of financiers of Blockstream, we find iFinex, the owner of the exchange Bitfinex, and Tether, the stablecoin with the largest market capitalization in the world, also known as USDT. This company could have its own video because it's a story by itself, but I'm going to try and summarize. According to the original claims of Tether, every token was supposed to be backed one for one by American dollars in a bank account. When that story began to fall apart, Tether changed its claims, and instead of saying they are one-to-one backed with the dollar, they now say that this USDT is backed by the company's reserves. To sustain the farce of being backed, Tether repeatedly propped up their holdings so that their accounts were not audited correctly. The company published a graph that shows how the stablecoin is backed, and in a nutshell, the percentage of money that backs the token is about 5%. The rest are different forms of debt.
If you guys remember, the New York Attorney General investigated them and found that Tether lied when they said that they were always backed one-to-one, and that from 2017 to like late 2018, like November-ish, they were unbacked, right? And then in 2019, they changed their disclosure to say, yeah, we're actually not backed one-to-one. We've been lying to you guys pretty much for our entire existence, but don't pay attention to that. But what I want to draw your attention to, guys, is, okay, so this chart that I have in front of me is Tether's market cap during the time that the New York Attorney General says they were unbacked, right? The New York Attorney General says, for sure, we know at this point they were lying to people. We know that they were not telling the truth, okay? So look at this chart, And I'm going to slowly take it. So this is the end of 2018, beginning 2019 here. This is when they changed their disclosure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this over and you're going to see how Tether has progressed and printed money after being found to have lied to people. So watch this, watch this. This is Tether's activity since the New York Attorney General determined they lied. This is the state of affairs with crypto, guys. The people we think who might be falsely inflating the market, this is where we knew they were lying to us. This is now the state of affairs. Tether is now worth more than Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme at its height.
With the possibility of issuing Tethers without backing, Tether uses the tokens to buy Bitcoins, and that provides more collateralization to print even more USDT. This could be creating a historic bubble capable of impacting the entire cryptocurrency market. Today, there is no record of a bank account that has ever held the dollars that supposedly backed this USDT. No bank in the world wants to have them as a client, and in this way, they became a digital currency without real backing that simultaneously represents a currency without any backing itself. But that is not the end of the list of bad actors that surround and finance the centralized development of Bitcoin Core. In the Blockstream investment round in 2016, another participant was Digital Asset Holdings, a startup led by Blythe Masters, a former executive at JP Morgan. This startup had already raised funds from financial institutions such as JP Morgan, BNP Paribas, Santander Innoventures, and Citibank, among others of similar kind. The investment was made with the express objective of promoting the development of second layers in which transactions could be accelerated. Everything mentioned up to this point is a brief summary to give you an idea of how many interested parties are involved in the monopolization of the Bitcoin network. It also makes sense of the following parts of this video. In order to disable Bitcoin and pretend it made sense and is the right thing to do, it was necessary to take control and dominate the main channels of communication of the Bitcoin community. The discussion took place mainly in two sites, the subreddit rbitcoin and bitcointalk.org. In the latter, we can still find the contributions of Satoshi Nakamoto. Keep in mind that these actions are several years past, and it would have been impossible to collect all of the evidence of all of the maneuvers used to manipulate the discussion and censor those who oppose the agenda pushed by the moderators of these forums. On both sites, we have a user posting with the name Thamos in general control of the forums where the present and future of the project were discussed. Many users began to notice that the moderators were trying to mold the content of the forums and pull discussion in a specific direction. To be clear, it was and still is practically forbidden to suggest increasing the size of the blocks. After Gavin Andresen was removed from the beloved project of Satoshi Nakamoto, together with Mike Hearn, he decided to launch Bitcoin XT, an implementation that would heed demands to increase the size of the blocks. Logically, this was taken as a threat to the agenda of Blockstream, and consequently the Bitcoin XT network began to receive a DDoS attack that basically consists of sending excess traffic to a network to collapse it. This was one of the factors that terminated the short life of Bitcoin XT. Discussing Bitcoin XT was forbidden on the forums. It was considered to be like talking about an altcoin, unrelated to Bitcoin. That is to say that Bitcoin can only exist in the way that Blockstream needs it to exist, with no possible alternatives, removing from the conversation any suggestion of making Bitcoin work according to the white paper. To make it even clearer, the comments pointing out the censorship also had a good chance of being censored. Among the excuses, we can find the words of Luke Jr., one of the developers of Bitcoin Core, who declared, "Manipulating public opinion is not censorship." Another of the main developers around that time, Peter Todd, wrote, "Roger's ideas are not being censored, they just aren't being listened to." But let's take a look at some of what the moderators said. In 2015, one of the important moderators, Bashko, close to Thamos, said in response to demands for change, Given the fact that the block size limit debate hasn't come to anything remotely resembling consensus, yet Bitcoin XT contains code which could fragment the blockchain and existing ecosystem, the decision to moderate Bitcoin XT topics as off-topic is consistent with actions taken towards alternate blockchains like Litecoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum, etc. I suggest we drop the inflammatory rhetoric and get to work on devising a way to scale Bitcoin which will achieve consensus. This is the magic word that they've tried to use to monopolize the conversation, consensus. And with this tactic, they tried to cut out any implementation other than Bitcoin Core like Bitcoin XT as an altcoin, even though Bitcoin XT runs on the same network with the same token, the same blockchain, and was interoperable with Bitcoin. In the same month of August, a user writes addressing the moderators, "Please don't try to impose your will on the Bitcoin community." This post was removed. The next day, another user writes, "How is the Bitcoin community supposed to build consensus to do a hard fork protocol upgrade when the moderators of our Bitcoin push out any discussion of a proposal that does not have consensus?" In one of the most upvoted posts in the history of the subreddit, you can read, "The Bitcoin experiment is being derailed by our Bitcoin admins and Blockstream core devs. This subreddit is being censored. No information presented here can be trusted." Bashko responded in that same thread, "More accurately, I support consensus. Attempts to moderate Bitcoin XT topics based on the lack of consensus has regrettably escalated to censorship." Even the CEO of Coinbase received the threat of being banned for expressing himself in favor of increasing the size of the blocks. The moderators that supported discussion of Bitcoin XT as a proposal began to be removed from their role. The administrator of Bitcoin.org suggested rewriting the white paper and claiming it was the Bitcoin white paper. All kinds of tricks were used to simulate community consensus, such as inverting the visibility of comments based on votes. Comments with the most votes were displayed at the bottom, while comments with the least votes were placed to the top. As I said, the story is long and the examples are too numerous. Sources are available so that you can dive into the subject if you wish. Those who had to leave the R Bitcoin subreddit, including Gavin Andreessen, created an alternative subreddit called RBTC in support of Bitcoin Cash, a project that was born in 2017 with the same objective as Bitcoin XT, to retain the main concept of the white paper and make peer-to-peer electronic cash a reality, but this time more aware of what we are facing. And it is with a dysfunctional Bitcoin that the possibility of selling a solution to the problem that they themselves created is opened. We mentioned this solution a few moments ago, and surely some listeners have had it in their heads since the beginning of the video, the Lightning Network. However, the Lightning Network has a serious problem that, in addition to being serious, is mathematical. The more centralized it is, the better it works. The idea is basically the following. The Lightning Network would be the method through which the bulk of the transactions are made, and on the main network would be where the occasional big settlements finally happen. We have Bitcoins on the main network, so to send them through the Lightning Network, we would have to first open a channel, and for that, we need to pay the network fee. In the Blockstream model, the common user does not use the blockchain, but the Lightning Network through channels opened by those who can pay the network fees. Lightning Network is usually illustrated as a distributed network, where if Carlos wants to send money to Juan, he can open a Lightning channel, and once that channel is open, he can send as many transactions as he wants until he runs out of funds or decides to close the channel. Generally, these explanatory videos that can be found on the internet omit that to both open and close a channel, you have to pay the fees of the main network. As they increase, halving after halving, less and less people are able to afford to open and close channels to access the Lightning Network or to withdraw from it, making the use of the main network more and more restrictive, forcing users to remain trapped inside the Lightning Network. On the other hand, according to an ideal model that is not implemented in practice, it should be easy to establish payment channels with any other user of the Lightning Network. However, given that in practice, in many cases users will not have a direct channel between each other, they end up depending on large nodes to act as a bridge. And it is because in the route the money takes from one user to another, all the intermediate nodes along the route must be preloaded with sufficient funds to mediate these transactions, since ultimately the Lightning Network works like a series of loans. This gives us a clear indication that the more centralized the network is, the better it will function, because end users will find it easier to locate a large hub with a lot of capital that everyone can use as a bridge, instead of many small intermediaries that have enough liquidity and stay online throughout the entire process. The system clearly favors the formation of large nodes, and the idea of increasing distribution with which the Lightning Network is usually represented not only does not happen in reality, but it is not viable. As the network grows in users, the routes become more and more complex, making the use of large hubs more and more desirable, since in this way it becomes more feasible to establish routes between end users. In practice, the common users do not set up Lightning Network nodes, nor do they open and close channels personally, but rather they trust a third party, a custodian of funds, to move within the Lightning Network. This point, once added to the fact that this second layer tends towards centralization, results in a new banking system where the big hubs on which the network depends can deny access and custodians can seize funds. In other words, the Lightning Network makes censorship possible. In 2017, Jonald Fuchbal demonstrated mathematically in detail why Lightning Network is not a feasible way to scale Bitcoin in a decentralized manner, because this method logically tends to centralization. After several years, the result Jonas predicted and illustrated manifested into reality. The article is going to be included in the sources below. I recommend checking it out. Let us also remember who are the ones who finance and promote this project, and what are their explicit intentions in the crypto world. This is no small thing. Lightning Network has never been able to solve the problem of miner incentives that we mentioned at the beginning. In fact, it competes directly with Bitcoin miners because the fees of the transactions that are carried out in the second layer do not go to the miners, but to the owners of the hubs. The main layer must of necessity work as we stated at the beginning of the video, at least if we value economic freedom. And this is achieved simply by following the instructions that Satoshi Nakamoto gave when talking about increasing the size of the blocks, which shouldn't be controversial.
So run your own full node or connect to a full node that you trust.
Right, but Bitcoin Cash doesn't want to do that. Bitcoin Cash supports SPV scaling.
SPV scaling is what was described in the original Bitcoin white paper. So you opposed to the original Bitcoin white paper?
The original Bitcoin white paper, it doesn't work.
Okay, so you think Bitcoin doesn't work. Got it.
Sadly, many very interested parties or even lovers of cryptocurrency have arrived in the ecosystem at a time when real adoption and the desire for freedom have been overshadowed by the greed for instant wealth and a strange sense of belonging to a supposedly enlightened class by having some number of coins in some digital wallet or trading platform. Under the slogan "Store of Value," they applaud never spending their coins and celebrate when the network is practically inactive.
So at the end of the day, I think there'll be know your customer this, there'll be anti-money laundering that, there'll be some tax regulations, there'll be some back and forth over what you can do, there'll be concerns about privacy. That's why I look at Bitcoin and I think, it's pretty clear. If the use case is store of value, well, like 7.8 billion people on Earth need a store of value, and probably the value of that is $100 to $300 trillion, right? That's enough. That's good. If the use case is currency, replace the dollar and the euro, that seems like that's just intentionally inflammatory. We don't need to replace the euro and the dollar. The bankers are going to be upset about replacing the euro and the dollar. I don't think it's going to happen, and not in the next decade or 2 decades, so we don't need to get wrapped around the axle on that. And if the use case is medium of exchange and payment, like we don't really need to pay for a pizza with it. We don't need to pay for Starbucks coffee with it. I mean, that's already solved by Alibaba and PayPal and Square and Apple Pay and Amazon and Google Pay. And it's, you know, they can be regulated, and Visa and MasterCard. So you can leave Visa and MasterCard alone. You can leave the dollar and the euro alone. We can agree to pay taxes. We can, we can not thumb our nose at regulators.
Under this model, Bitcoin represents a tiny threat to central banks, as much as the money from a mobile game. However, the problems that Bitcoin was designed to solve have not only persisted, but they have grown substantially worse. Invasion of privacy, censorship, inflation, and control have been increasing at the behest of new technology and driven by new crises that the state creates and then arrives to solve. This is why the project of Satoshi Nakamoto is still alive in Bitcoin Cash. After the experience with Bitcoin XT, and with the certainty that the captured Blockstream project was only going backwards, in 2017, a new Bitcoin update was born, designed to scale as planned from the beginning. This upgrade allows the block size to adapt to scale with demand. To differentiate itself from the Blockstream protocol, it chose the name Bitcoin Cash. For its development, members of existing implementations such as the aforementioned Bitcoin Unlimited took into consideration some important characteristics that make Bitcoin a good currency and reliable and predictable like cash. A reliable and predictable network. With the distorted Bitcoin core model, the fees are high and unpredictable, and transactions can take hours or even days to be confirmed. In the original model, followed by Bitcoin Cash, expanding capacity allows instant transactions and with extremely low fees. Bitcoin Cash is a peer-to-peer currency. The narrative of a digital gold or store of value makes no sense. If there is a lack of utility, any perception of value is built on purely the projection that the price will increase as more people buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash works as peer-to-peer money, and its value rests on both the scarcity of currency units alongside its scaling utility on the main blockchain. So many people don't care to understand that with increasing fees, they will no longer have access to the Bitcoin network. Although, with the current Bitcoin BTC fees, a significant part of the world is already left off the network. This indicates that many interested in Bitcoin BTC have forgotten that the network was supposed to be freely accessible to the entire world and not exclusive. Bitcoin Cash has the capacity to onboard new users indefinitely and continue to function in the same way with low fees and instant transactions, maintaining the decentralized scheme that makes the network resistant to censorship. The Bitcoin Cash community is very active, as are its developers. Thanks to that, today we have a perfectly scalable model with developers who are involved from the beginning of Bitcoin and high suitability since they start from the same chain of blocks protected by their own proof of work that keeps the network safe and decentralized. It has early Bitcoin adopters participating in the community, efficient tools for privacy, and the possibility for creating smart contracts thanks to Smart BCH and a strong movement of people committed to making real change in people's lives. The first time I heard about Bitcoin was in 2015. At first, I thought it was some form of private digital money similar to e-gold. It takes time to really understand what a decentralized system is for cash and why it is such a valuable tool. When the idea had formed in my mind and I understood what it meant through the lens of the economic and political context of that time, today intensely escalated, I became insistent about it, and in all my social circles I brought it up, among my friends and libertarian acquaintances. It was very easy and exciting for me to let them know that there was a form of money that could change everything if we started to use it ourselves and expand its use. Time passed, and working for adoption began to be set aside, as hoping for new highs in the price became the preoccupation, and the slogan "store of value" was heard more frequently. But luckily, I understood that real adoption of cryptocurrencies was an urgent topic, especially with everything that has happened since the beginning of 2020. From time to time, I would see some video of someone paying with Bitcoin in a chain like Burger King or maybe a small barbershop somewhere in the world, but I didn't know anything about Argentina or Latin America. Every now and then I came across Bitcoin Cash almost casually on Instagram, and it seemed to have strong supporters in the libertarian and agorist communities. So I decided to investigate, and I ended up meeting people very involved in the subject, and well, a few months pass and here we are. Although it was not at all pleasant to find out that the version of Bitcoin that I promoted until then was actually something very removed from what I thought I was promoting, at the same time it gave me some relief to finally understand why it was that adoption was not progressing. Eventually, I came to recognize that the price is a factor of least importance, and the community of Bitcoin Cash helped me to see it clearly. Today, the Bitcoin Cash community is unique, a group of libertarians consistent with their ideas who want to abandon a monetary system of war and social engineering. Bitcoin Cash is simply the best tool we have found to achieve that goal. Meanwhile, Bitcoin BTC continues to work on a model that trends towards centralization in the hands of corporations and can eventually completely separate from the blockchain, repeating the cycle that the gold standard has already fulfilled, while they continue to distract investors with new all-time high prices and new investment rounds. The Bitcoin Cash community works for the adoption that was supposed to be the focus from the beginning by talking to merchants and bringing this tool closer to more people in a context where it is so needed. After all, Bitcoin is a tool for individuals, and I, as an individual, have already chosen which version best corresponds to my ideas. The Blockstream model is designed to receive new corporate investors and create bigger custodians. The model of Bitcoin Cash is designed to welcome new users and provide the world with a tool for freedom.